respects to the Buddha, the original teacher. We pay our respects to the Dharma, the teaching, and we pay our respects to the Sangha, the ordained masters and mistresses. Thank you. So how is everyone?
Good.
Good? How's the weather these days for you?
Hot.
A bit up and down, isn't it? Well, the nights are been a little bit cool.
But it's weird because it's autumn now. But it doesn't change.
Have you heard of climate change? Global.
That's true, yes.
We carry on as if it's all just a myth.
Yeah.
But in fact, the figures just keep coming out in support of it, don't they?
Yeah. Well, the fact that it's autumn and it's still very hot.
Yeah, well, they say that this week is record temperatures.
Oh, right.
Yeah, some of the days are record temperatures. So can I perhaps just ask people just a very short introduction, name and perhaps what your interest is to come tonight to this particular teaching. We can just get some idea of how to pitch. Can I start, Don, with you?
Oh, certainly. My name's Don. I'm currently a volunteer pastoral carer. So listening to Venerable speak about grief and loss was very informative for my role. So yes, I'm looking forward to what Venerable has to say to us tonight.
Hello everyone, my name is Brenda. I'm Don's wife. So we're actually doing the same job as volunteer pastoral carers in the aged care facility in Oban. So that's the reason why we're here. So I have the same reason as him. Thank you.
So I met Don and Brenda the very first time you came to the Metta Centre, yes?
Yeah.
So they were brand new to the Metta Centre, and they were really kind of brand new to the Buddhist scene. Yeah.
Oh, to the medicine, yes.
To medicine.
Ah, so they got very enthusiastic, and now they're full-blown members of Metta Centre and do a lot of volunteer work for the Metta Centre. And they also have a wonderful vision of establishing some kind of support facility in aged care. So it's a big vision, but it's great to see. A year and a half later, it's still alive for you, so that's great. Thank you. Okay.
My name's Mitchell. I came along tonight that I could be part of the community here, but also in terms of grief, I'm really curious to hear about how to treat death in general.
Thank you.
I'm
Can I just ask you, have you had an experience that's been significant for you?
No close family members died.
Okay.
I'm Harrison, Mitchell's brother, and I'm here, same as him, I really want to be involved in this community. I mean, we have a lot of, living in Chatsworth, we have a lot of Buddhist community there, but I'm just really drawn to this place. I like volunteering here, and I was actually honestly really interested to learn about, yes, like dealing with grief, but also the fact of like different traditions of Buddhism, and I was very interested in the fact that you were a Korean, in the Korean tradition, and I was quite interested to hear your perspective on death coming from that tradition.
I'm not sure how much I'll come from the Korean tradition specifically, from the Mahayana, but also I was first ordained in the Theravada, in the Thai tradition, so I also have that.
Rita, my name is Rita. Last year I attended your talk about death and dying, and today I have shown some kind of continuation, same thing. It's good to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a journey, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Because you at that time were talking about, well, what am I going to do? And now you've graduated from social work and you're out there working. So that's wonderful to see.
Hi, my name is Bridget, and I'm here because I'm a nurse, so I just want to deal with a lot of death and dying, but I also want to about the grieving, not just because of death and other things, but just in my own personal life, you know, just for things that have happened. Yeah.
Thank you. Bridget,
Yes.
a strong accent there. The Irish. How long have you been in Australia?
20 years.
20 years.
Yes.
I love the Irish accent.
Have you been back there?
Yeah, lots of times.
Because after 20 years here, you've still got a really strong accent.
Yeah.
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 Where do you work, Bridget?
Canterbury. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Wesley. I'm new. I was referred to the centre through my counsellor at the Family Relationship Centre. My son is 13 and we've been through separation for the majority of his life. And to be honest, I've only been to the Buddhist monk temple once when I was 18, 39 now. And I'm just looking, I've accepted some things that have happened in life, and I understand the second step, which is grieve. And the third step is getting on with it, but I've tried to get on with it and choosing religion and things like that. Being born a Roman Catholic, and I just want to start accepting that my grandfather passed away this last year in July, and I just want to start living a selfless life. You know, I don't want to be just living for me, but at the same time understand that healing is part of the big process. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do now, which is putting an oxygen mask on me and trying to start clean and free from fleshly desires and things like that. And I'm a student at NIDA at the moment, and I'm studying acting and arts, and it loves me back just as much, and I want to try and pursue something that
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
I'm Ken. I'm sort of generally interested in grief. I'm over 50 and I've got a few friends who are seriously ill and things. So there's a bit of grief around me, and it's more to. I'm just generally open to learn more about grief and handling grief. So rather than any specific one. So that's basically what I'm.
My name's Michael, and I actually work in this field of grief and bereavement, so that's my interest.
What is your role?
I run the bereavement counselling service for Sydney Local Health District, which includes Canterbury Hospital, actually, as it turns out. That's RPA and Common Hello. Yeah.
And so your interest to come is?
I've been interested in Buddhism for a long time. I just came from running a mindfulness and grief workshop today, so I'm on a roll, so I'm just keep going.
Oh, excuse me, are you Michael Dash?
I am. Yeah.
You're Michael Dash?
Yeah.
Okay, we heard your name. Yeah, we heard your talk before too.
20 years ago, Kanye Barbara.
Sure. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Michael.
Yes.
So is the centre here is it associated with the Victorian grief and bereavement?
No, that's it's a standalone thing. That's probably the premier Australian organisation.
Yeah.
The Australian Centre for Grief and Bereavement is the big sort of Australian centre, I suppose. We just sit within the health district here, and we sit within palliative care, although we see people where it's any sort of bereavement. So it might be from palliative care, it might be hospital generally, or it might be someone out in the community who lives in our area, and it might be another sort of death perhaps.
So it's area based.
It's area based.
Yeah.
That's right. You speak the language.
It's good. I only came from Victoria early last year,
Right.
so I'm much more familiar with the services down there.
Yes, yeah, they're very well organized,
Yeah. So I actually, just for people's information, I've worked in healthcare, in many, many roles over my life before I ordained. And in more recent years, since I came back to Australia, I've also worked in palliative care and in at one of the big primary hospitals, Box Hill Hospital in Victoria, in Melbourne, in renal and in oncology. So my background is in psychology education, psychology and social work. So cover all the bases, and I actually established the spiritual care, pastoral care program for Buddhists in Victoria over a few years for the Buddhist Council. So just a little bit of introduction. So actually we have 2 nights with this grief and loss discussion, and so tonight I actually wanted to really just touch a bit more on a little bit more on the Buddhist aspect of it, and then next time to move into a more kind of look more directly at the applied kind of knowledge and skills, and for those of you who are working in the area, you know, just perhaps to have an opportunity to explore, you know, what kinds of teachings and processes might be helpful for you in that regard. So tonight I just want to do a bit of an overview. So I think that the interesting thing with grief, loss, death and dying in our world, particularly in the Western and Australia, in especially, is while the census figures show us that more and more people are moving away from religious kind of identification, at times of grief, loss, death, dying, their old associations tend to come more to the fore again. So I think part of the reason for that is, of course, that the religious traditions, you know, offer some possibility to look at, to find meaning, to explore the inexplicable, to perhaps find some hope. So I think this is, it's important for us, even with people, if we're working in this field, even with people who aren't identifying as having a religious or, you know, a spiritual inclination, that don't be surprised if that's something that they would like to explore more in those times. But of course if they don't, then that's okay too, because we're all about patient-centred and person-centred, and so the agenda with working with people doesn't come from our agenda, it comes from the needs of the person that we're working with. So, in the Buddhist understanding, of course, death, dying, grief, loss are all part of the life path, and so we accept that this is inevitable. And Buddha teaches the truth of impermanence and the truth of change, and so it's very fundamental, very core to our teachings. But it doesn't change the fact that when we ourselves experience you know, some deep loss, that we don't also experience, you know, all of the or some of the associated symptoms, for want of a better word, characteristics of that experience. But I think there are clear teachings in the Buddha's teaching that can help us to actually, while we work through our grief, through our loss, to be able to see to some extent at some point beyond that and see how we can transform that into a life-giving path. So we're very fortunate to have those teachings. And you know, I also, of course, as a Western person, I come from a Christian background, and that was my upbringing. And I have, you know, I guess I was a child who was much more interested in that than many of my peers. So I do have a reasonable understanding of the Christian teachings, and you know, find that there's so many correspondences really. So no one has the high ground in this regard. In fact, today I was just reading again the Beatitudes that Jesus gave on the Mount Sinai, yeah? And remarkable really how close they are. When you can, you know, just let go of a little bit of the language, is to see, you know, the direction of his teaching was so simpatico really with the Buddha's teaching. So any religious path, you know, even the major religious paths will offer you know, teachings and supports in this regard. So with the experience of grief and mourning, you know, this burden of, you know, the psychological weight, of loss in many different ways, loss of, you know, the obvious loss of someone that we love, but there are many other losses in our life that we also grieve, and these losses are probably not so prominent in people's minds, and so people can struggle with these losses without the supports that are available for the loss in a real sense through death. But you know, they can be just as challenging, and you know, they can also create many complications in our life. And I guess if we're not able to, you know, to be able to deal with them and to resolve them, then what we experience is a cumulative grief, where many of these, perhaps what we think perhaps of in our society as lesser losses, start to pile up and can then cause you know, a major problem with grieving, where people are not so easily able to move through that process in a natural way. So the sorts of losses that I guess we may experience, particularly in the dying process, are the obvious things. What would you expect that people might experience at that time?
Sadness?
Sorry?
Sadness?
Sadness.
Sadness.
Sadness? Yeah, sorry. I'm hearing here. Yes?
Fear.
Sorry?
Fear.
Yeah, fear. Yeah. Anger, yes. So these are the emotional responses. But what do you think the actual tangible, kind of measurable losses are that people experience in that process, particularly if people are you know, experiencing a protracted period of dying? What do you think might be the kinds of losses that we would experience at those times?
A sense of loss of control.
Loss of control is a major one, yes.
Which would trigger more grief.
Yeah. What else do you think? Not only through morphine, did you say?
Sorry?
What did you say?
I was saying it will also trigger continual grief and
Yes.
grieving a loss of control and
Yeah.
independence.
Yeah, that's right. Loss of independence. What else? When you think about when we're ill, not necessarily dying, but you know, I guess in that experience, if we have a significant illness that goes on for a while, what are the sorts of losses that we experience or may experience?
Is it loss of comfort?
Loss of confidence?
Of comfort.
Of comfort.
Yes, if you're kind of in lots of pain.
Yes.
And
yes.
you're ill, or even if someone else was to die, then that would be, you would lose a lot of comfort, especially if that person was close to you. Then they might bring, like if it was a partner or a dear loved one, then they would bring a lot of comfort and support. And when they're not there anymore, then you would lose a lot of that.
So comfort, I suppose, in terms of bodily condition.
I guess also like emotional support.
Psychological. And, I guess in terms of relationship support, a long illness can put a lot of pressure on the partner, can change the nature of that relationship, particularly if that partner is a primary carer in that relationship, where they become very overwhelmed by the caring role, and the quality of relationship can be affected by that, the emotional, relational quality. What else do you think?
Loss of function.
Loss of function, yeah. That's a primary one. Yeah. Anything else?
Loss of freedom, I think similar to function.
You have to speak up.
Loss of freedom.
Loss of freedom, loss of independence.
I guess similar to loss of function.
Yeah.
I think from the other perspective, the people who was with them when they were healthy, there's a loss of companionship.
That's right. Yeah. So why I'm doing this with you is, I think it's really important for you to, to think and to touch that in yourself, rather than just coming and listening to me and going away. Because this, everything that I will say to you tonight, is you understand, but most often you don't go there unless you're really in trouble yourself, or you don't have someone to tell you how to do it. So I think that when you make that connection in yourself, it's a much more real learning process. Okay, you can lose loss of identity, really. Loss of position, loss of status is a big one. And I don't know, if I experience that in my work with people, that men actually, in general, seem to have a greater struggle with that than women. Perhaps because women, their identity, status, is defined in more ways than just in a worldly way. They have permission to be able to have see their identity very situated within the home and the family to a greater extent than men. That may be changing. I'm much older now, so I can't speak so much for the younger generation. So maybe that's changing. I understand these days that there's a much greater sharing of responsibility for children and the caring role within families. So of course, initially, many years ago, when I first started out, we had the final word on grief and loss and the stages of grief. Who knows who developed that?
I've heard of it at school, but I can't remember it.
So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she was the first person really to develop an understanding of grief and loss within a stage process, so that that they could identify a number of reactions of processes that people may move through. And at that stage it was seen as a fairly transitional, progressive, staged approach, but that's been overturned again and again in later years, but still, you know, her stages of emotional manifestation are still much the same. So the stages of anger, bargaining, denial, depression, and acceptance. So often when people experience, you know, they receive the news that someone close to them has died. First, I guess there's for people there may be a shock reaction, a numbness, and I guess then some of those people will move into perhaps you know, I guess everyone is different. There are no progressive stages, but some people may then move into a stage of why me? Why has this happened? Others will perhaps start to think about you know, how they might you know, a bargaining stage, which is really to kind of look at how they might keep that at bay, how they might be able to transact that, so they don't have to you know, really go deeply into it. Anger, of course, is a stage of you know, kind of stage of protection, of denial. Again, why me? Why is this happening to me? So, and depression. Not everyone goes through these stages, as I say, but depression is another stage that people may go through. And then finally, you know, in a normal grieving process, people reach a stage of acceptance. Now, this can take a long time. It can, you know, some people it may happen, you know, in a relatively short time. Probably not in the time that our society actually expects us to be over it. So I think that, you know, we have, do we still have compassionate leave in workplaces? Yeah?
Oh, do we?
Yes, I think 3 days compassionate leave. So
Sound
it's highly unlikely people are going to move through. So it can be a very lonely time. Has anyone experienced a deep loss? Parent or sibling or grandparent?
My grandparent has died.
Yeah. So how would you see that experience for yourself? What would you? What can you tell me what you experienced in that?
I guess I found when my great grandma died, I didn't very see her very often. I mean, she did live in Sydney, but she lived in a village. And I think I used to see her a lot when I was younger, but as I got older, I didn't. And then so when she passed, I guess there was a lot of the family was a bit. Yes, they were all sad and grieved, but there was a bit. She was like over 90, so she'd reached that stage of her life where she just wasn't happy, but just the only way was her naturally pass. But so we were all very, very sad, but I think it didn't hit me straight away because I didn't see her very often. So it was more like when I thought about it, I haven't seen great grand in a while, maybe I'll go visit her, then it was that it would just hit me in those moments going, I'm no longer able to do that. And then I think not until like very recently I then kind of started remembering all the good times that I had and all the moments I remember, like, scootering around her house and her giving me lollies and things, and so all those nice memories I had of her visiting her when I was younger, those kind of got. So the more kind of the nicer memories and of being quite fondly thinking of her more recently.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My grandfather passed away last year, and about a year before that I went and saw him in Mauritius, and it was frame by frame, picture perfect, each scene I've had of him, and I guess time doesn't exist across that, because each time, every moment was held dearly. But I went there a couple of years ago, and he was 92 at the time, and his name's Max Joe, God rest his soul, and I said to him, Granddad, I had a choice of going to LA, Chennai or Mauritius. I rolled the dice and here I am. And you got any shortcuts in life? And he used to write letters to me every year, and still to this day I'm down on myself not writing back. And he left me the Shakespeare book, but this is what he said. He said, if this dear life was to grant me the opportunity to live this life again, I choose to do one thing different. And me, I wasn't looking for an answer, but there it was. And I said, what's that, Granddad? And he goes, I choose to never go against my gut. And so he left those dying words with me and the book of Shakespeare with every play. And we did a little bit of Hamlet, and he continued on, and then I discovered I used that same monologue or soliloquy to get into Metta. And you know, he didn't get to see that, but you know, I'll continue his legacy and maybe try and write back to him by expressing myself artistically somehow. You know, that'll be my way of writing back to him, saying, I've trusted to go. I'll choose to never go against my gut.
That's wonderful. Very good advice. Yeah. I can remember my mother died when I was studying in Thailand, and she died very suddenly of a heart attack, and I hadn't seen her for some time, and so I came back. My family called me, and I can remember coming into the house and just walking round and round and round for days, and hey, where is she? You know, just this question mark. I mean, you know, I knew, but there was just this complete kind of disconnect with the reality of you know, her death and being, you know, in this place where she completely inhabited it, and so it was quite a difficult experience for myself and the siblings, because, as I said, she just dropped dead actually from the cardiomyopathy, and so no one really had an opportunity to you know, to prepare or to say goodbye. And she was the matriarch really. And
what does that mean?
Sorry?
What does that mean?
The matriarch is like the head of the family.
Oh.
The mother rather than the father.
Like so like the opposite to patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was the one who kind of held everyone together. And, so it was a great loss, and my brothers and sisters and I, who hadn't been very close really in years, because several of us had gone to different ends, you know, different parts of the world, and we didn't have a lot of contact with each other, and we thought that we knew each other really well, because my mother would keep us in touch with, you know, she would give us the stories about what everyone else was doing, and so we lived in this idea that we kind of, you know, we ourselves were in contact and close with our brothers and sisters. But this experience brought us very close for a period of time, very intense actually, and then my father, who was grieving, really his heart was broken, and he was grieving very deeply, and that was quite difficult. I stayed and looked after him, and he died 100 days after my mother did, really not for any you know, health reason, but he just gave up. He didn't want to be here.
Would you say he died of a broken heart?
Yeah, he died of a broken heart. I mean, that sounds very strange, doesn't it? But I really believe that he did. And then that was very interesting, because my siblings and I really just split apart a bit.
Oh,
It was all too much, the intensity of it. And so then we went off in our separate ways. But I can remember in that time, you know, especially after my father died, I would find myself talking to strangers, and that was the most consoling kind of conversations I would have, where somehow, you know, I'd just be drawn, or we would be drawn to each other in all sorts of places, you know, in parks and bus stops and train stations, and you know, we just find ourselves in this really really significant conversations. And my mother and I had, we had a bit of a stormy relationship. We were both pretty strong and pretty, kind of determined in our own way, and our own way was kind of different for each of us. And I had a very, very sure idea about who she was, and I believe she had a very sure idea about who I was. But it was like 2 years later, I can remember I was in a Myers store, and I can just remember thinking to myself, I really had no idea who my mother was. I knew, I knew her in terms of what my need was, to the way I needed to see her, the way I needed her to be. But it was just very interesting for me to feel this kind of, release, really, from, just this idea of who she was, and kind of a new insight, really, to see that how much we project our own ideas onto people, and how much of our grieving process can be determined by that too. So, it was a wonderful thing for me to be able to let go of that and to let her be, whoever she was, really, and to feel the freedom, really, not the burden of loss, but then to feel that this was a new time, that really they had gone on, and I could go on and perhaps do things that I hadn't been able to do. I hadn't allowed myself to do when they were alive. So grieving can go on for a very long time, and it may go on fairly consistently, for a short period for some people, for a longer period, and then it may seem that it's come to an end, but then there'll be significant triggers that will bring it to light again, and I guess things like birthdays and special anniversaries and occasions, maybe something as simple as the smell of particular food, or something that brings it back into mind. So with grief, it's really important not to judge it. Everyone is different, and everything is okay, and it's within a normative range. It becomes problematic if the grieving process goes on for a very long time, and or if people become to some extent confined within that grieving process. Their life is is negatively affected by that process. But I think for some people, for me, it was a couple of years really before I felt that grief had lifted. I actually went to work when my father died. I went to Melbourne, and I grew up in Tasmania, so I was back there but I went to Melbourne just after the fires, and I worked with people across the ranges who'd lost homes and lost livelihood and lost family, etc. And a couple of people said to me, it's not a good thing to do that when you're still in your own grieving process. And for me, that was actually a very powerful, positive thing. What I did do at that point was find a counsellor, a psychologist, to be able to, kind of separate out my own grief from the grief that was all around me and was permeating me from that huge loss and grieving of those communities after the fires. So that's another consideration, is if you're working with people, in the area of grief and loss, death and dying, it's really important that you have someone who you can use as a mentor or use as a counsellor, or in some way to be able to debrief and to kind of reflect on what's happening for you in that process, because it is very real. And grief, it can be an underlying mental process that we're not necessarily fully in touch with. That's why it's so important to be able to develop a reflective process for yourself, as well as having an external contact in that regard. So apart from the stages of Kubler-Ross, we may experience also a longing, a yearning, a searching, some of which I experienced in my loss. We may also go through a period of, really feeling, disorganised, kind of almost, not grounded in ourselves. I guess all of these things are experiences. They're experiences, and for most people they will pass in time. So we do what we can to be able to provide a healthy container for our grieving process, and not to isolate ourselves, because that's a great, kind of tendency for some people. For some people, it is important to have more time alone. We're all different in that regard, but I guess with any of these characteristics, it's about understanding that while they're all part of the normative process, there are degrees, and so in yourself or when you're working with others is to really try to see what's happening in that process. The burden of loss can be, as I say, can be dealt with. We can go through that process and then come to a kind of resolution of that. And for others, they get stuck. And as I said before, it may be that there's been an accumulation of grief experiences where there's been several, one or two or more people in family or friend groups who have passed away, or had significant health challenges, etc. So that it's kind of happened quickly enough that we haven't really had a chance to process and resolve each experience. And so cumulative grief is something that is not always, but it is probably important to look at suggesting that someone actually seeks some more professional support in that regard. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah. So please help me. Could you? Okay. So for some people, they just get trapped, kind of feeling like sink into that experience and feel that there's no way out of it. And again, that's something that it's going to be really important to help people to seek support, to find how they can free themselves, start to move out of that stuckness. So, in the Western cultural landscape, you know, I guess more than the Eastern, in a paradigmatic sense, is that we're conditioned really to hold on, not to let go, and the really the resolution of the grieving process is to come to that place of letting go and that place of acceptance, and that can be a very difficult thing for some people. But of course that's something that we must do, and because, you know, it's a part of everything, as we know in the Buddhist teaching. There's nothing that isn't going to disappear or pass away or die. So everything that comes into being passes away. And so this understanding can help us as a knowledge and can become experience. But in the grieving process itself, when we're deep in it, sometimes it's not so easy to step back from that emotional condition and see, you know, accept the truth of that from an intellectual position. And so a really important thing that we can offer people in the grieving process is a way of actually, you know, coming into a much more intimate contact with their grieving process, to be able to journey with it in a much more intimate way rather than to hold ourselves apart from it, because it is really who we are, in a sense. We're born into a life of suffering and you know, the inevitability is that we will die and everything around us will die. And so for us to be able to understand ourselves, we need to understand the world around us. We need to actually go into that understanding in a very personal way.
So is it like a general accepting that things are impermanent and temporary and don't last? Is having that acceptance, like not kind of, because if we have that expectation that we'll always have certain things or certain people in our lives, then that will lead to more grieving when they pass. And is it better to have a general awareness and acceptance that things...
Well, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, and intellectually we can go there.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily, that's not necessarily a deep experience in us.
Mm.
So we can tell ourselves, you know, that everything is impermanent, that, you know, death is certain, and but in ourselves at a deeper level, at an unconscious level, you know, we struggle with that. And so so I guess that's where I kind of want to move that understanding, is how can we, you know, how can we really understand what's going on inside ourselves? So we can, you know, we can read the books, and as I said, we can have a, you know, kind of a knowledge or some understanding of the truth of impermanence and you know, the truth of coming into being and passing away. But unless we really touch that deep in ourselves, then it's not really, it doesn't really have much power. And so all of the other beliefs and messages that are, you know, that are kind of ruminating in us, that are basically controlling how we live our life moment to moment, will really have the power. So we need to find a way to actually engage in the inner aspect of ourselves. And so with grief and loss, something that seems to be very effective is to be able to connect with a deeper understanding of that in body. So sometimes talking isn't that helpful at that time, but to be able to help people to explore what's happening in a very
Safe.
Body body way is very helpful. So I just want to do a short practice with you now, just to take you into that experience and just perhaps explore that a little bit. So if you just want to settle yourself into a comfortable sitting, and just let yourself just relax. Let yourself just kind of unwind, drawing the mental attention down from the frontal lobe, the outer looking out, bring it down into the body. So taking your awareness down into the body. And just become aware of the breath. The breath that's entering through the nostrils and leaving through the nostrils. Try to follow that for a little while. Just consciously breathing in through the nostrils, following the path of the breath. Down into the lungs, deeply into the lungs, and then letting that breath fill down into the belly. Breathing in through the nostrils, following the flow of the breath down into the lungs, letting it fill the lungs, moving down into the diaphragm, the lower abdomen. And then just bringing your awareness down into the belly, around the point of the navel. Focusing your attention in that part of the body. Just taking a few deep breaths down into that part of the body, into this point that we call, well, it's in the English it's called the will center. In Japanese it's called the hara. This point where in the Buddhist understanding it's a subtle body point that we associate with the rising of thoughts, of feelings, and the disappearing of thoughts and feelings. And as you start to relax a little bit more into the sitting, just start to become aware of your body posture. Start to investigate a little bit around the body where you're holding. Tension, tightness. Scan the body, see where you've got major areas of holding. And as you come across those areas, breathe into that particular area. And as you breathe out, just let it relax. Let it soften, open. Basically, we use body. We hold particular postures and particular areas of tightness and clenching as a way of protecting ourselves from things that we don't want to know about ourselves, or from difficult memories or emotions. And these just become part of our experience of who we are. And when we're going through a very difficult experience in our life, we tend to hold that in our body. We clench ourselves. We hold our body still, parts of our body, to protect ourselves against hurt or harm or strong feelings. So with this process, we need just to become aware of how we are holding this control, this resistance in our body, and then to use the breath to be able to get a little bit closer to those areas of resistance and gently invite them to release, to open a little bit. To relax. And it's important that you do a practice like this for yourself, regularly enough that you can actually offer this to other people that you're working with. Because if you can't experience it in yourself, then you're not going to be of much help to anyone else. But when you touch it in yourself, when you know this process in yourself, then you can be a great help to others. So Buddhism really offers the teaching of compassion, of wisdom, of no harm. And these teachings are the seminal teachings of Buddhism, and they're also very important in the work that we do with people who are grieving. The work of actually supporting people to have compassion for themselves. And this will also help to free them from the deep stuckness of grief and loss. And again, the way that we do that is the same kind of process. Because if we don't touch that compassion in ourselves, if we don't open ourselves to compassion, then we can't actually offer that to anyone else. So the inner work is really, really important in whatever external difficulty that we're experiencing. And there are many stories, of course, in Buddhism of the experience of grief and loss. And there's, for example, from the time of the Buddha, the stories that are still recorded in the Therigatha collection, which is the very wonderful collection that we still have of the ordained nuns or bhikkhuni of that time. One of her stories is about a woman called Ubiti, and Ubiti was from a high royal family, and she was from a clan called the Saviti clan, and she was a very beautiful child, very comely, and she was actually married off at a young age to a king of the Kosala. Who knows the Kosala region? From where?
In the stories, in the suttas, the King Kosala.
Sorry?
In the suttas, King Kosala.
Yes. So actually, the Kosala people were the people who Ashoka, the last war that he waged was with the Ashoka people, and he defeated those people. But this was before that, so this young woman was married off to the king, and she had a child, and the child was a very, very lovely child, but died soon after birth. And Ubiti was, as you imagine, was just mad with grief, really, just completely overwhelmed with grief. And the daughter's name was Jiva, which means life. And so it was particularly poignant, this very beautiful child who they had for such a short time. And Jiva just couldn't really come, she couldn't, just couldn't kind of find her way through a very painful grief. And she used to go to the cremation ground every day where the baby was buried, and she would just sit and weep and wail and couldn't do anything more than that. So every day she would go to the cremation ground. And then one time she went to the cremation ground and there was a crowd of people there, and the Buddha was passing through, and as he did, he stopped at various communities and stopped to offer some teachings. And so Ubiti's, she tried to settle and listen to the Buddha's Dharma, but she found she couldn't do that. After a little while she got up and went to the river bank and sat wailing very loudly, and the Buddha heard her deep grief, and he went to her and he said, what is your grief? And she explained to him what had happened, and he said to her, Mother, you cry out, O Jiva, the child's name, in the woods. Come to yourself, Ubiti. 84,000 daughters, all with the name Jiva, have burned in the funeral pyre. For which one do you grieve? So he was pointing to, I guess the natural outcome of life was death, and how many had gone before this little baby with the same name, and how this experience was a human experience, and how important it was to be able to really try to see the truth of that passing. So there was another one actually that was a little bit similar to that, which was Patachari. Patachari lost the whole of her family in one day. Her newborn baby was carried off by a hawk, and her older son drowned in the river, and on the same day her mother and father and brother were killed in their house when the roof collapsed on the house. And so this really, again, almost incomprehensible loss that Patachara just couldn't seem to, like a long time. She just wandered the countryside mad with grief, and tore her clothes off and walked naked and slept where she fell down, and was just completely crazed with grief. And again, the Buddha was coming through, and she saw the Buddha and some of his followers at a distance, and she started to move towards that group, towards the Buddha. She recognised the Buddha, and some of his followers said, "This crazy woman sent her away. Don't let her near the Buddha." And the Buddha said, "No, let her come." And then she got close, and the Buddha said to her, recover your presence of mind, daughter." And with that, Patachara came to her senses, and was able to then hear what the Buddha had to say to her. And the Buddha spoke to her in a similar way that he had to Albieri when he said, basically, this you have lived many, many lifetimes, many daughters you've had, and each of them has left. And this is the truth of existence. We're born, we live a life, short or long, and then we pass. And the only truth of the freedom from the suffering of this painful grief and hurt is to follow the path of coming to see the truth of suffering, which is the attachment to wanting things the way we want them, our refusal to accept the truth of existence, the truth of coming and going, the truth of conditions as they are in every moment, wanting things to be different. And so this is the particular kind of wisdom that we have available to us, I guess, that can help us in these times when we get caught in very deep experiences of grief, but also experiences of anger or attachment in many kinds of ways, wanting things to be other than what they are. And so the path is always the same. It's not different, whatever the conditions are that we're experiencing. It's always the path of coming to see that the importance of being able to move beyond the egoic consciousness that wants things to be, how they are for us, and accepts that we ultimately have no control over the bigger questions of life and death. The Japanese haiku master, Issa, 17th century Japanese master, he lost a baby daughter and he wrote, "The dewdrop world is the dewdrop world, and yet. Very beautiful. The dewdrop world is the dewdrop world, and yet. What do you hear in that?
I don't really understand that.
I didn't understand either.
You don't understand it. What did you hear? What is the feeling?
Would you be able to read again?
The dewdrop world is the dewdrop world, and yet.
Seems very comforting.
Hmm?
Very comforting.
I hear the battle of the heart and the mind in that.
Yeah, what is that?
There is the intellect saying, well, it's the dewdrop world, it's impermanent, I get, and the heart's like, and yet,
Yeah.
this is how I
There's more and more.
Yes. So I guess in this haiku, you can get that sense that this man, he lost his daughter, and he has moved in his grief process to some extent where he can actually intellectually look upon it and say, well, yeah, I know that. So there is a little bit of a loosening. You can get that sense, and yet, not quite resolved, but on the way. Then there's another one, another Zen Renjetsu, who's a Zen nun from the Japanese tradition around the same time as Issa. And she expresses the poignancy of loss and impermanence in this way. The impermanence of this floating world I feel over and over. It's the hardest to be the one left behind.
It's easier to understand.
Hmm?
That's easier to understand than the one before.
Well, the thing is, we don't need to understand intellectually. We need to really let the heart experience it. And so that's where the release is. That's where the healing is. Not in all of the explanations and the mentality of trying to talk ourselves out of it or reason with ourselves. It's allowing the process just to take its course and just to accept what's happening, not to judge it, not to reject it, not to wish it was something else, just to be with it, to honour it, and to let it take its course. So there's an old woman who once told a caregiver, these are very much Zen stories in the way of the Zen tradition. So this old woman told a caregiver that wisdom and compassion are not given to us. So they're not something that we can take from books or someone else can bestow upon us. And that was something that Patachara, the second story that I told you about, Patachara who lost her whole family. One of the questions that she put to the Buddha was, were pleading with him, please take this away from me, restore my child. And the Buddha said, I can't do that. Even I can't do that. Only each of us has to do it for ourselves. It's our journey, and we have to go through it. No one else can do it for us. So we can companion people, and we can support people, and we can seek support from others around us when we're in that circumstance. But really, it's something that we must do alone, and it's something that is really the heart journey. And we discover it really in the process. It's not something that there's a map for, with all the stopping points along the way. It's only in the trusting of it, as we allow ourselves to get closer to it, to respect it, to honour it really. And it's the deepest aspect of who we are, and that's where our wisdom is. That's where our compassion is, that's where our liberation is, through that. If we try to avoid it, we don't grow as human beings. We don't mature as human beings. So it's a human journey, whether we're Buddhist or whether we're any other religion or nothing. It's still the path to a completion, maturing of a human being. So there's no other way except to go through. I think I keep saying that. Every good time I've probably come to that same point. Do you think that's true? Yeah. So we're just going to finish now with something that we're going to actually do together, which is, do you want to take these, Brenda, and just give them like that? This is a practice that's based on the Brahma Viharas. Who knows of the Brahma Viharas? It's a practice for transforming grief. The Brahma Viharas, also known as the Four Immeasurables, or the boundless abodes. And they are love, compassion, sympathetic joy and equanimity. And these and virtues, a path of practice that were actually given by the Buddha to a group of Brahmins who came asking the Buddha, can you please tell us how we can attain the highest heaven, the Brahmin heaven. So they weren't Buddhists, they were Brahmins. And the Buddha didn't say, well, go away, you're not Buddhists. So he said to them, this is the path. And he gave them the four immeasurables, the path of love, the path of compassion, the path of sympathetic joy and equanimity. And this process is a way of transmuting grief into compassion, equanimity. So again, we're just going to do this in a meditative way and using the breath. But we're going to just first of all do this together. Just settle into a comfortable sitting and just bring your attention to the breath again. And this particularly let your heart soften and be a little open. Cultivating a tender heart, a gentle heart. So as I said, transformation of grief really only comes when we're touched by our loss at a very deep level in ourselves, and we come to know it, and we experience the purification of it through letting it just express itself and be washed in the waters of our heart. So just bringing the attention to the breath, and we're going to just breathing in, and as we breathe out, we're just going to together read this line by line. So really bring your attention into body. And focusing on the breath in the body. And if it's comfortable for you, just to bring your attention down into the belly, breathing down into the belly. And as you breathe out, may I fully face life and death, loss and sorrow. Breathing in, may I be open to the pain of grief. Breathing in, may I find the inner resources to be present for my sorrow. Breathing in, may loving kindness sustain me. Breathing in, may I accept my sadness, knowing that I am not my sadness. May I accept my human limitations with compassion. May I accept my anger, fear, anxiety and sorrow. May I forgive myself for not meeting my loved one's needs. May I forgive myself for mistakes made and things left undone. May sorrow show me the way to compassion. May I be open with others and myself about my experience of suffering and loss. May I receive the love and compassion of others. May I find peace and strength that I may use my resources to help others. May all those who grieve be released from their sorrow. minutes to look again at those for yourself and just see if there's one that particularly resonates with you at this point. And then do this same process, concentrating on that one. If there is one, or more than one, or just focus on all of them. But just take a minute to do your own process now. Letting your attention just rest gently with the phrase, resting on the breath. Anything jump out at you in that? Anything particularly that spoke to you?
I accept my anger, fear, anxiety and sorrow, and the other one, I accept my sadness knowing that I am not my sadness. I think that a kind of idea of accepting, I find that very, very personal, I can really connect with. And also the idea of accepting you have an emotion, but also recognizing that you're not just an emotion.
Anyone else?
I receive the love and compassion of others. I receive the love and compassion of others.
That's important, isn't it? Because we, particularly for people who are caregivers, it's like, we're always concentrated on doing for others and having compassion for others, but we're the last really to kind of think about how important it is for us to develop that quality in ourselves, and that we understand too that really we're not, we're limited in being able to care and have compassion for others if we haven't really come to terms with that in ourselves, having compassion for ourselves. That was something that came to me much later in my life. I always thought that was something that I did very well for myself, but at one point I came up against that very strongly in myself and realised that that was such an important key for me to go to another level of understanding and practice. So don't wait as long as I did.
The ones that stand out for me, I think, are related to equanimity. May I be open to pain and grief? May I forgive myself for not meeting my loved one's needs? Those two resonate with me. I was in grief and I was sitting on a cliff wanting to see a whale, and I was reflecting that desire, wanting to fix the grief. And I noticed a little baby snake in the corner, and it went in front of me, and I just had this awakening how messy nature is. You know, I want a whale and I get a snake. But it was really deeply transformative in terms of accepting and not trying to control, not trying to, you know, forgiving myself for not meeting my loved one's needs. The acceptance was pretty strong. Nature's messy, people die. That change in perspective, that change in perception and control, and identity view, letting go of the controller. And I'm sort of reflecting here on, so we do in grief and open up the heart. We do change our view of suffering, of self, of impermanence, all that.
And when we move our focus from here, where we need to understand it all reasonably, rationally, logically, we move to the heart, which is a bit of a wild territory, like you say, a bit like nature. It's it's not predictable in the same way, but that's what's real, and as is nature. I mean, that's in every moment. That's what the truth of what there is, and our insistence that it should be different is where the suffering comes.
I was much earlier in my spiritual development now. I think.
Sorry?
I was much earlier in my spiritual development now, so I think I was a control freak at the time, trying to fix the world. And interesting what you were saying. After that, I started writing stories and sharing with other people, my family who were suffering. And my daughter started writing poems, and she published her poems and got a scholarship into an Navy school, publishing her poems all about the loss.
So actually, you helped her to connect with a different aspect of
I
it.
can easily like to think that I helped her get into college. There's probably other factors. She probably did it herself.
Well, yes, but I guess you gave her the opportunity, really.
Yeah, but it resonates what you were saying about it being, for his dad, being express himself. Because we can sit.
Can't meet those deadlines sometimes.
Yes.
Oh, you ended expressing the waters of the heart, I guess. That's what's going on, expressing yourself in the waters of the heart.
Anything anyone wants to ask or share or question?
Sunim, I can see the last line and I resonate with this, and it's the last two lines: may I find peace and strength, that I may use my resources to help others. May all those who grieve be released from their sorrow. It's almost like this movement from the sense of building oneself, opening oneself to our own grief and loss, and then transforming that experience to one where we can be of benefit to others, and also finding the universality of the fact that other people are also grieving, other people also have sorrow and loss as well. And that resonates with me because it's actually a movement of the practice, it seems. Obviously it's important to start with oneself, but then you can move beyond that to something quite beautiful as a service to others. And hearing from today what people have done is it seems like they've been able to share their own personal stories with others, and people have resonated with that, and it's taken you to be able to transform your own sorrows into something that's inspiring for others.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I suppose the deeper we go into that journey, the more we understand that we're not what we think we are. So this self that we think of in a very limited, kind of individualistic ways, something that we experientially have a very different understanding of. It's very tangible, the experience of that interconnectedness, that we don't end here, and that when we do the work on our own lives and issues, and examine our own mind, then it's not just for us, because there's only really one mind. So we do that work not only for ourselves but for all beings. So it's not like we have to get ourselves, kind of healed first. In the process of seeking that for ourselves, we're also, in a sense, offering that to all beings. And so it's a simultaneous thing. Yeah.
Where does this list of sayings come from again? Was it someone the Buddha met? Did you say?
Well, it comes from it's based on what we call the Brahma Viharas, is the actual Sanskrit word, or the four immeasurables, four abodes. So it's a teaching that the Buddha gave to a group of Brahmins who came to ask him for some advice.
So is it connected to a certain sutta?
Sorry?
Is it connected to a certain sutta?
The Brahma Vihara Sutra.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Have you got that image?
How can we apply this knowledge to help someone who's grieving? Because I had an experience, a lady lost her mom, and she just didn't know what to do. She just didn't know, say, one question she always asked, where do I go from here? So how can we apply, use Buddhist practice to help someone who's in that position?
So what did you say to her?
Basically, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but I mentioned to her that she's actually carrying on for her mom. I said if that's a little bit from Thich Nhat Hanh's books, Thich Nhat Hanh tradition. I said when you look in the mirror, you can still see your mom. So your dad passed away, your mom passed away, but they're still with you, so you're still carrying on, still in your blood, in your flesh. And something else I said.
So how was that for her when you said that to her?
I'm not quite sure actually. She didn't say whether it helped or not. I think she looked a little bit relieved. And one other thing I told her was, this will pass. It's temporary. No matter how hard you're cleaning out, it will pass.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes people are not ready to.
No, I think it's too. Sometimes when you're in that.
So what is one of the basic kind of guidelines in this work that we've talked about a lot in the training I've done with you, which is it's not about our advice or our agenda. It's about the answers are in us, in each person. So is helping them to find their own wisdom, their own resources, and rather than actually giving answers or teachings to people.
So basically we're just there to listen.
Well, to listen, but also, to help help people to reflect themselves. In terms of what is their experience that they can draw on, what are you know, what are the resources that, you know, each of us is different.
At the moment, I think she's still in shock because her mom passed away overnight, like in the morning. She basically came to the place and found the mom dead in the morning. And then she was early in the afternoon, and then she didn't know what to do with the body. She was still in shock. She just didn't know.
So some questions don't need to be answered. It's the same as when I came back overseas and I just had this question, where is she gone? You know, it wasn't a question that could be answered with words or with, you know, a definitive answer. It was, you know, it's like a koan. It's a question that is really, you know, is for me to explore more deeply. But you know, so I guess you if you're not sure what to do, is perhaps, you know, just to say to the person, you know, I'm not really sure. What do you think? Can, you know, what might? Do you know what might be helpful at this point, or is there something that I can offer you at this point that might be helpful? Because sometimes it's not necessarily explanation. You know, sometimes it's just to help people to move into, you know, breath awareness or something that kind of brings them, you know, again into body. And, you know, because a lot of that is happening up around here, and it means that there's an anxiety sometimes associated with that. So, you know, helping them to ground and to settle a bit more, to come into a greater calmness and resilience. What do you suggest?
I think what you said is perfect. It's the exploration, isn't it, with the other person that's really important. And I think the challenging thing for me always is the willingness to be present to and present with that level of suffering without wanting to solve it. Because in a sense it certainly can't be solved by us, as Sunim is saying, I think. And in a way it's insoluble because it's part of the human condition. There is suffering. So can we bear witness to that, be present to that, and remain centred, and also feel something of that as well? It's a tough thing to do.
So what would you do in that situation?
Did you just tear?
Do you know what? I don't know. Each situation
is different.
And you have to be, you start where you are and you go, with a big question mark, I don't know, and is there something I can do, some way of being that would be useful? And take it from there.
And to be able to be in that, as Mark says, without allowing one's own needs and anxieties to overtake us. That's something that we grow in. You know, it's not something that we just immediately step into and can do. So, you know, it's something that the more that we work in that way with people, the greater and the greater commitment we have to doing that reflective process in ourselves, the more we gain, an increasing equanimity in ourselves and can bear witness to what they're experiencing without needing to impose by giving answers or allowing our own fears and anxieties to impede. Yeah.
There's a sense of confusion. She was really confused. She didn't know what to do with the body. It was already one day. Then the body was still in the room, and she just asking everyone. She grabbed everyone, so she doesn't know what to do. So there was a big sense of confusion. Then what should I do?
Yeah.
So she was grabbing everyone to ask the question.
But
What's
that's
the
not
next step?
common.
Yeah,
I mean, not that particular scenario, but I guess, that, as I said,
practical things, people need, the first thing when somebody died, they say, what do we do from
that's
here?
right.
Which is practical, because you want to know what happens from the body from here to here. So there's always like social workers in the hospital. Like if you don't know what, do they not have social workers, or surely they have a policy within the nursing home what happens with the body from here, that because she's in a state of shock, she's not taking in that there. If they've got like it all documented, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is what happens with the body from here. When she gets home, then she can look at it when she's more calmer, more centered, then maybe it'll sink into her.
And part of the thing sometimes with that sort of questioning too is, you know, we need to busy ourselves with some task or some focus that takes us away from our own, you know, our own pain or, you know, grief experience. So this is, you know, it's all okay. You know, we don't need to have answers because our answers are not the most helpful. They need, you know, they will find their own answers if we can help them. By sometimes just being with them, holding them in silence, you know, just being with them, as you know, as I say, bearing witness, you know, to them, to their grief, to their, you know, to their suffering, and that, you know, in that, you know, kind of attitude of being solid, of being equanimous, it allows the other person to come into some stillness in themselves, to find whatever they need to find. And that mightn't be in that moment, or mightn't be in a week or a month. No, it's not in our time. We're just there in that moment with that person, you know, to help in any way that we can.
I had an incident one time. This lady came up, her mother was in nursery. Her mother was 80 or 85, and she brought the father up. But like I had Brian them early because her condition had deteriorated. And the minute the dad came in, like she had died then, so I told him to. And the minute he came in, he just threw himself over her, you know. And the daughter was like pulling him off. And I just said to her, just leave him, let him do, you know. Yeah. And she was like, he can't be doing that. He can't be doing that, you know. Yeah.
But that's a split-second thing, isn't it? I mean, you know, for you, you know, you can be in a situation, you know, I've been in situations where, you know, really, the earth's opened up under me. There's no ground, and I don't, you know, it's not a thinking process anymore. It's like in that split second, opening to allow whatever comes through me in a way. And if I can trust that, then, you know, almost inevitably it's a positive thing. But if I try to work it out, control it in some way, or make some judgment of it, you know, most often will not be a positive process. So it's a coming to trust ourselves more and more, and that only comes from the inner work with ourselves. Because what's out there is a mirror, isn't it? As were you saying that, Dana?
What?
Were you saying that? Well, no, you were saying that.
I'll take credit for it, sure.
A mirror.
Sounds good. Maybe we can talk about it.
It seems to me, Venerable, that grief is not something you can fix or you can deal with. It's a journey that you have to take somebody through.
And just need to be fixed. We have such kind of fixed ideas, don't we, about, you know, what is reasonable and acceptable behaviour and etc.
May I ask a question? Did you write this reflections?
Which one
Did
is
you
that?
write these reflections?
No, I didn't. No. No, it comes from a teacher in the States, John Halifax, who was a student of the same teacher, the Zen master, Korean Zen master that I was with for some years. She was with. And so she's established now in the States quite a major teaching centre and compassionate care centre called the Upaya Zen Centre. So if you go online, you actually learn a lot about what they do, which is much more developed than we have here in Australia at this point. So yeah, she's grown a lot over the years that I've known her, really. Yeah.
These reflections are very beautiful. I'd like to share it with whoever might be going through the process and give credit to the author, Joan. That's Joan, is it?
Joan. Joan Halifax. So she's now she when my teacher passed, she moved on to the Japanese Roshi tradition. So she's a Roshi. Yeah. So I mean, there's many practices that that can be very helpful. So I guess that's part of what you can familiarise yourself with, and just it might work for one person, not necessarily work for the next person. And I guess it's offering something that people can find their own relationship to, their own resonance with, if they're open to that. Tina's giving me the wine down. Tina's always giving me the wine.
With great respect. With great respect.
So, thank you very much.
And we will be back again next week, so same time, same place, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And also Sunim will be conducting a number of courses as well on the weekends on Saturdays. And all of the dates are on our website, so you can check it out. Next weekend we also have an urban retreat with Ven Bom Hyon Sunim, who's a monk from Thailand. So he's previously come and conducted retreats here in Metta Centre, so we're very fortunate for him to come again. So you're most welcome to join for that.
This is on the 14th, that's the week then after.
That's the weekend, next weekend. Ven Bom Hyon Sunim.
Oh,
Yes, he's a Thai monk. So I can give you the dates. That's the 21st and the 22nd of April.
Okay, yeah.
And Sunim's also here on the 28th of April for the Art of Pause. Looking forward to that. That's Saturday. And then the Death and Dying course related to what we're doing here will start on the 5th of May. And that would go until every Saturday until the 26th of May. And then the following Saturday, Sunim's back here again for haiku. Yay! So really exciting and fun stuff.
So haiku's a bit of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully you guys can
Haiku.
I think it's called.
haiku. If you're not on our mailing list, we can also get your contact details and put you on our mailing list, and that would be great. So you will be updated with all these different events coming
Is it
up.
all on the website?
Yeah, it's also on the website and also on Facebook. Like us on Facebook if you haven't already. And thank you everyone so much, and see you next week.
Well, next time I also will bring a few